AITA for canceling my parents' anniversary party after they uninvited my husband because he's a waiter? I, 28F, have been married to my husband, 30M, for 3 years. He's kind, hardworking, and loves his job as a waiter at a high-end restaurant. It's not just a job to him, it's something he takes pride in. He's passionate about the art of hospitality and has built a solid reputation in his field. Unfortunately, my parents have never seen it that way. They've always looked down on his career choice, making passive-aggressive comments at family gatherings like, "When are you going to find a real career?" or, "You're so smart, why waste it waiting tables?" My husband has always brushed it off, but it's been a sore point for me. Planning the party. When my parents' 30th anniversary was approaching, my siblings and I decided to throw them a surprise party. It was meant to be a grand celebration, with extended family and close friends coming together to honor their marriage. I took on the bulk of the planning since I'm in the best financial position. We booked a beautiful venue, hired a caterer, and sent out invitations to about 50 guests. My husband was just as excited as I was and even helped me brainstorm ways to make the night special. He suggested personalized party favors and a slideshow of old family photos, which I thought was a great idea. Everything seemed perfect, until last week. The call that changed everything. My mom called me out of the blue and dropped a bombshell. She said she and my dad were uncomfortable with my husband attending the party. When I asked her why, she hesitated before saying, "Some of our friends are very prestigious, and we don't want to be embarrassed by his job." I was stunned. At first, I thought she might be joking, but she wasn't. I told her that was cruel and completely unacceptable, but she doubled down, saying, "It's just one night, he should understand." I was livid. My husband is not only my partner but someone who has been nothing but kind and respectful to my family. I told her flat out that if he wasn't welcome, then neither was I. She tried to backtrack, saying it wasn't about him as a person, just about how it might look to their friends. The more she talked, the angrier I became. How could they prioritize their snobby friends' opinions over their own daughter's happiness and marriage? Canceling the party. After hanging up with my mom, I thought long and hard about what to do. I realized I couldn't, in good conscience, go forward with the party knowing they had disrespected my husband like this. The next morning, I called the venue and the caterer to cancel everything. I also informed my siblings about the decision. They were shocked when I told them what our parents had said. While they agreed our parents' behavior was unacceptable, they thought canceling the entire party was too extreme since it wasn't just for them, it was for the whole family. But to me, this party was supposed to celebrate my parents' marriage and values. How could I celebrate them when they were treating my husband so horribly? After I canceled the party, the fallout was immediate and intense. My mom called me within hours, her voice shaking with a mix of anger and tears. "How could you do this to us?" she said. "This isn't just about you, it's about your father and me, about the family. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is?" I took a deep breath and calmly replied, "Mom, I canceled the party because you made it clear that my husband isn't welcome. If he's not good enough to celebrate with you, then neither am I." This only made her more upset. She accused me of being overly dramatic, saying things like, "You're throwing away months of planning over one little request. Can't you just let this go for one night? You're ruining everything." I told her that it wasn't about the party itself, it was about the principle. She hung up on me in frustration. After speaking to my mom, I called my siblings to explain why I had canceled the party. My older brother, Mark, 33M, was the first to respond. He was supportive but thought I had overreacted. "I get where you're coming from," he said. "But was canceling the whole party really necessary? This was supposed to be a celebration for everyone, not just Mom and Dad." I reminded him that our parents had made it clear they valued their friends' opinions more than my husband's dignity. How can I celebrate their marriage when they're actively disrespecting mine? My younger sister, Emily, 26F, was more understanding. "Honestly, I don't blame you," she said. "What they said about husband's name was awful. But now the rest of the family is going to be caught in the middle, and I don't know how we're going to move past this." Her words stung because she wasn't wrong. While I stood by my decision, I knew it would have ripple effects on the entire family dynamic. Over the next few days, my parents made it their mission to paint me as the villain. They called relatives to complain about the canceled party, framing it as me being selfish and ungrateful. One of my aunts called me, clearly siding with my parents. "I understand you're upset," she began, "but your parents have been together for 30 years. This is a big milestone for them. Can't you put your feelings aside for one night?" I told her plainly, "It's not about my feelings, it's about their lack of respect for my husband. They're the ones who drew the line, not me." The conversation ended awkwardly, and I could feel the weight of judgment from the extended family growing heavier. When I told my husband everything, his initial reaction was a mix of disbelief and sadness. We were sitting at the kitchen table, and I could see the hurt in his eyes as I explained what my mom had said. "They really said that?" he asked quietly. I nodded, feeling my own anger resurface. "They think your job isn't good enough to be around their friends. It's disgusting, and I wasn't going to stand for it." He sat silently for a moment before saying, "Maybe I shouldn't have been invited in the first place. I don't want to be the reason there's drama between you and your family." His words broke my heart. My husband has always been proud of his work, but this situation had clearly shaken him. I took his hand and said firmly, "You're not the problem here. They are. And if they can't respect you, then they don't respect me." Over the next few days, I noticed a change in my husband. He seemed quieter and more withdrawn, which is unusual for him. Normally, he's the kind of person who lights up a room, but this situation seemed to have dimmed his spark. One evening, he admitted, "I know I shouldn't let it get to me, but I can't stop thinking about what they said. I've worked so hard to get where I am, and it feels like none of it matters to them." I reassured him that his job didn't define his worth and that anyone who looked down on him wasn't worth our time. But I could tell the comments had struck a nerve. He started second-guessing things he'd never worried about before. At a dinner with friends, he hesitated to share stories about work, saying later, "What if they think I'm just a waiter and don't take me seriously?" It broke my heart to see him questioning himself because of my parents' snobbish attitudes. Fortunately, my husband has an amazing group of friends who rallied around him. When he opened up about the situation, one of his closest friends, Mark, a chef, told him, "If your in-laws can't see the value in what you do, that's their loss. You're great at your job, and you make people's nights better. What could be more respectable than that?" Another friend chimed in, "You're more than your job title. You're a good husband, a good friend, and a great person. Don't let anyone take that away from you." Hearing this seemed to lift his spirits, at least temporarily. He came home that night looking a bit lighter, telling me, "I'm lucky to have the people I do. Including you." Despite the support, the situation still weighed on him. One night, as we were getting ready for bed, he said, "Do you ever think your parents were right? That I should have picked a different path?" I immediately shut that down. "No. Never. I married you for who you are, not what you do. And I love the path you've chosen because it makes you happy. That's all that matters to me." He nodded, but I could tell he wasn't fully convinced. This whole ordeal had planted a seed of insecurity in him that I hated seeing. During this time, my younger sister, Emily, reached out to check in. She said she'd been thinking about the situation and wanted to know how my husband was doing. "Honestly, not great," I admitted. "This has really gotten to him. It's like my parents' comments made him doubt himself in a way he never has before." Emily sighed. "That's so unfair. He's such a good guy, and I hate that they've made him feel this way. I wish I could do something to help." She suggested we plan a small dinner for just the siblings and our partners, as a way to show my husband that not everyone in the family felt the same way. I thought it was a sweet idea and agreed. Emily's idea to host a small sibling dinner felt like a glimmer of positivity amidst all the family drama. She and I worked together to plan an evening that would focus on love, support, and showing my husband he was valued by at least some of my family. We decided to keep it simple but thoughtful. Emily hosted at her apartment, and she cooked a couple of dishes my husband loves. My older brother, Mark, agreed to pitch in by bringing drinks and dessert. He also promised to keep the mood light and drama-free, which was a relief. I told my husband about the plan, and while he was hesitant at first, he eventually agreed. "It sounds nice," he said, though I could see the apprehension in his eyes. The evening turned out better than I expected. My siblings and their partners went out of their way to make my husband feel included. Mark cracked jokes about how he could never handle a job in a restaurant, saying, "I'd probably drop someone's soup in their lap on the first day." Emily added, "Honestly, I've always thought it was cool how you're so good at what you do. I mean, you're like a restaurant ninja, right? Balancing trays, remembering orders, keeping everyone happy, that's impressive." My husband laughed for the first time in days. "I guess I've had a lot of practice," he said. By the end of the night, I could tell he was feeling more at ease. He even opened up about some funny stories from work, and everyone was hanging on his every word. Of course, my parents couldn't stay out of it for long. When Emily casually mentioned the sibling dinner during a phone call with my mom, she immediately turned it into a point of contention. "So, everyone gets together without us now," my mom said. "I see how it is, siding with your sister instead of supporting your parents." Emily tried to defuse the situation, explaining that it was just a casual gathering and that no one was taking sides, but my mom wasn't having it. She called me that evening, clearly fuming. "I can't believe you went behind our backs to plan a dinner," she said. "You're dividing the family over something so petty." I had had enough at this point. Petty? You uninvited my husband from a party because of his job. You humiliated him and made it clear that you care more about appearances than family. How is that petty? She doubled down, saying, "I was just trying to avoid an awkward situation. You've blown this way out of proportion." I told her flat out, "If anyone's dividing the family, it's you. You've made it clear that you don't respect my marriage or my husband. Until you can apologize and change, I don't want to hear about who's ruining things." She hung up on me. The next day, my dad called me. His tone was calmer, but it was clear he was trying to do damage control. "Look," he said, "your mom and I might have handled this wrong, but canceling the party and causing all this drama, was that really necessary?" I explained to him, once again, that this wasn't about the party. It was about respect. If you and mom can't respect my husband, how can I celebrate you? It doesn't make sense. To my surprise, he sighed and said, "Maybe we owe him an apology. Let me talk to your mom." After my conversation with my dad, I was cautiously optimistic. While my mom had shown no signs of backing down, my dad's admission that they might owe my husband an apology felt like a step in the right direction. But I knew better than to get my hopes up too high. A couple of days later, my dad called again. This time, he sounded hesitant, like he wasn't sure how to start the conversation. Finally, he said, "I talked to your mom. She agrees that maybe we could have handled this differently." That didn't exactly sound like an apology, but I let him continue. He said they wanted to meet with my husband and me for coffee to clear the air. I relayed this to my husband, who was understandably skeptical. "Are they really going to apologize, or is this just another chance for them to justify what they said?" he asked. I didn't have a good answer but told him we didn't have to go if he wasn't comfortable. After thinking it over, he said, "I'll go, but only because it's important to you. If they start blaming me again, I'm leaving." We met at a small cafe near my parents' house. My mom was already seated when we arrived, her expression a mix of annoyance and discomfort. My dad greeted us warmly, but my mom barely said a word as we sat down. The conversation started with my dad apologizing for how things had been handled. "We didn't mean to hurt either of you," he said. "We just got caught up in worrying about how the night would go, and we made a mistake." It was a decent start, but my mom's silence was deafening. Finally, my husband spoke up. "I appreciate you saying that," he said. "But this isn't just about the party. This is about the way you've treated me for years. The comments about my job, the way you talk down to me, it's not just one incident. It's a pattern." My mom's face flushed, and she said defensively, "We've never meant anything by those comments. We were just trying to encourage you to reach your potential." My husband calmly replied, "But my potential isn't defined by your standards. I'm proud of what I do, and so is your daughter. That should be enough." Instead of apologizing, my mom dug in deeper. She said, "It's not that we don't respect you, it's just that we want the best for our daughter. When we think about her future, we want her to have stability, and sometimes it's hard to see that with your line of work." At that point, I couldn't stay quiet. "Mom, stop," I said firmly. "You're not worried about my future, you're worried about how we look to other people. Your obsession with appearances is ruining your relationship with me, and now it's affecting my marriage." My mom looked taken aback, but she didn't say anything. My dad quickly stepped in to smooth things over, saying, "We understand now. We'll do better." But the damage was already done. My husband stood up and said, "I think we're done here. Thank you for trying, but I don't think this is going to work right now." I followed him out, leaving my parents sitting in awkward silence. Later that evening, my dad called me again to apologize. He admitted my mom's behavior was unacceptable and said he would keep working on her. I told him I appreciated his effort, but I needed space from both of them for a while. My husband, meanwhile, seemed relieved to have stood his ground. He said, "I'm done letting them make me feel small. If they can't see my worth, that's their loss." When I told my siblings about the meeting, Emily was furious with my mom. "What is wrong with her?" she said. "She just can't admit she's wrong, can she?" Mark, on the other hand, was more measured. "At least Dad's trying," he said. "Maybe this is the start of some real change. But I get why you need a break from them." We agreed to keep things low-key for the next few family gatherings, avoiding any situations where my parents and my husband would have to interact. After the disastrous coffee meeting with my parents, I decided to take a step back from them. While my dad seemed genuinely remorseful and open to change, my mom's inability to apologize or reflect on her behavior made it clear that I needed boundaries for my own well-being, and for my husband's. For the next few weeks, I kept contact with my parents minimal. I didn't block them or cut them off completely, but I didn't initiate conversations either. My dad called occasionally, often to check in and give me updates on how my mom was processing everything. According to him, she was feeling hurt and defensive. "She thinks you're being unfair," he told me during one call. "She doesn't understand why you're prioritizing this so much." I made it clear to him that this wasn't about picking sides or prioritizing anyone over anyone else. "I just need respect for my marriage, Dad. That's it. If she can't offer that, then I don't know what else to say." He seemed to understand, but it was clear my mom wasn't there yet. While things were tense with my parents, I focused on supporting my husband and helping him regain his confidence. The sibling dinner had been a great start, but I wanted to do more to show him how much I valued and respected him. I planned a surprise date night at his favorite restaurant, a place he'd always admired for its food and ambience. During dinner, he casually mentioned that he'd been thinking about applying for a promotion at work. "It's not because of your parents or what they said," he clarified. "I just realized I've been holding back on going for it. I think I'm ready to take the next step." Hearing him say that made me so proud. I told him, "No matter what happens, I'm behind you 100%. You deserve this, and anyone who can't see your worth is blind." About a month after the coffee meeting, my dad called with some surprising news. My mom wanted to host a small family dinner to make amends. He said she had been reflecting on the situation and was ready to apologize to my husband. I was skeptical. Is she actually ready to apologize, or is this just another attempt to smooth things over without addressing the real issue? I asked. He assured me that she seemed genuine. My husband, however, wasn't convinced. "I'll go if you think it's worth it," he said. "But if she starts with excuses again, I'm out." The dinner was hosted at my parents' house, and the mood was tense from the start. My mom greeted us politely but didn't say much beyond that. My dad tried to keep the conversation flowing, but it was clear everyone was waiting for the elephant in the room to be addressed. Finally, after dessert, my mom cleared her throat and said, "I want to say something." She turned to my husband and began, "I've been thinking a lot about what happened, and I realize that I hurt you, and my name. I shouldn't have said what I said or made you feel unwelcome. That was wrong of me, and I'm sorry." Her words felt rehearsed, but at least she was saying them. My husband nodded and said, "Thank you. I appreciate that. But I need you to understand, it's not just about the party. It's about years of comments and judgments about my career. I'm not asking you to love my job, I'm asking you to respect it, and me." To my surprise, my mom actually listened. She didn't immediately deflect or defend herself. Instead, she said, "I can do that. I don't fully understand your career, but that doesn't mean I should dismiss it. I'm sorry for making you feel like you weren't good enough." While the apology didn't erase all the hurt, it felt like a genuine step toward healing. My husband and I left the dinner cautiously optimistic, and I could tell he felt a bit lighter afterward. Later that night, he said, "It's not perfect, but it's a start. I can live with that." Since that dinner, things with my parents have been slowly improving. My mom still struggles with her judgmental tendencies, but she's making an effort to be more respectful. My dad has continued to play the role of mediator, and while I wish he would stand up to her more often, I appreciate his attempts to keep the peace. As for my husband, he's thriving. He applied for the promotion at work and got it, which has been a huge boost to his confidence. He's happier than I've seen him in months, and knowing that he feels valued, both at work and at home, means everything to me. This experience has been a roller coaster, but it taught me the importance of standing up for my marriage and setting boundaries, even when it's difficult. My parents and I still have a long way to go, but for now, I'm hopeful that we're on the right track. And most importantly, my husband knows he has my unwavering support, and that's what truly matters. TLDR. My parents planned their 30th anniversary party, but they uninvited my husband because they were embarrassed by his job as a waiter. Furious, I canceled the party, sparking a huge family fallout. My siblings were divided, my parents accused me of being selfish, and my husband struggled with feelings of inadequacy after years of judgment from my parents. After weeks of tension and failed attempts at reconciliation, my mom finally apologized at a family dinner, acknowledging her disrespect and agreeing to be more supportive. While things aren't perfect, my husband has since regained his confidence, got a promotion at work, and we're cautiously rebuilding the relationship with my parents. Through it all, I've learned the importance of standing up for my marriage and setting boundaries.